What up, what up, what up? What's going on, peoples? Happy New Year's and all of that. It's been a long time since we dropped the video. You know, you could thank Mr. Woo Beasley for that. No, I'm only joking. What up, Woo Beasley? But yeah, shout out to my boy Sean for coming up with this quick subject, which is a good one. I like it. It's a good one. You know, Sean had suggested that if Mayweather would have been in the era, fought in the era with Leonard and, I'm sorry, well, you could say Leonard too, Leonard, Hearns, and Hagler, Roberto Duran era, that he would have caught some L's. He wouldn't have been able to hang with them guys. And, you know, I disagree, because obviously he learned from those guys. And if you look at any of those guys right now, and other than, I don't know with Roberto Duran because he speaks Spanish. He doesn't speak English, so it's really hard to tell when he speaks Spanish whether or not his speech is slurred. But all of those guys I mentioned, Hearns, Hagler, Leonard, when you hear those guys speak, you can see the damage that they took throughout their career. Like, they all got that slight slur. Even Hagler doesn't speak that fluently anymore. You know, you could tell he took a lot of punishment throughout his career. And Mayweather learned from them guys right there. And whether you hate him or love him, that guy's technique is something to behold. I'm a guy who didn't like Mayweather either at one point. Because I grew up in the era of watching people like the Hearns and Hagler fight, or through Sugar Ray Leonard's era and Tommy Hearns and Roberto Duran, seeing guys like that fight during them era and them fight each other. And, you know, the excitement those fights had, which was great. But, you know, knowing the true art form of boxing, a lot of times those guys put caution to the wind, and they went at each other, and Mayweather learned from that. Because, again, those were very exciting fights. They made history, set a standard, things to that nature. But at the same time, those guys are damaged. So, you know, they took damage to their health for our entertainment. And, you know, Mayweather was smart enough and learned young enough that, you know what, I'm not going to do that. You know, it doesn't matter. I'm the one putting my life on the line in that ring. So I'm not going to throw caution to the wind just to create exciting fights for the fans. You know, that wasn't his priority. His priority was getting in and out of there safe and making the most amount of money, which he did. He, you know, goal accomplished. And, you know, some people may say, well, that ain't what it's all about with the sport and things to that nature. But again, I'm an outside the box thinker. And again, I didn't like Mayweather either, his style of fighting at one point, until I actually learned more about boxing from a technical standpoint. And once you understand the nuances, and then you see the little things that he does outside of throwing punches that neutralizes his opponents and makes them ineffective. You know, people, you know, the average person watching a fight who don't understand things like that, you'll look at him, oh, this is boring, and not knowing the nuances to what he's doing is amazing. Once you understand, you'd be like, man, how does this guy just shut people down, where guys who are known to throw X amount of punches per round, how they just can't get their punches off. It's like totally shuts them down and then just picks you apart, does whatever he wants, totally controls the fight. Like, never seen anyone else do it in boxing, and especially against high-level fighters. And you could take example after example after example of guys who fought against other opponents, and you see the way they fight or what they did, but for whatever reason, when they get in there with Mayweather, you'll say it's boring, but he's just totally makes dudes ineffective to what they do. And I don't see him doing anything different with a Hagler, a Hearns, a Duran, anybody, until, like I said, it never happened. That's the whole thing. We can speculate and say that would have, could have, but it never happened. This never happened. It never happened. You could say like a Corrales would have been a Hearns, type Hearns. Lanky, tall guy, reach, devastating power. Maybe not as much power as Hearns, but definitely can lay you out with one for sure. Corrales, before Mayweather, he was that guy. You know, a lot of people thought, oh, Mayweather was going to get busted up in that fight. I did. When I saw it, I was like, oh, I don't know about this one for this Mayweather guy. You know, he wasn't a big name back then. And he put the beats on Corrales. It was nothing. It wasn't even competitive. You know? So once again, what was it? What made it that Corrales, this guy undefeated, knocking everyone out, couldn't do nothing against Mayweather? And it went on to win titles after and having classic fights after the Mayweather fight, just like a lot of other guys who Mayweather beat. You know? So, yeah, man. His dedication to the sport, like I said, no drinking, no smoking, you know, came up with the Money Mayweather character to make people hate him. You know, Jake Paul took a page out of that book, but just didn't have the skills to back it up. But yeah, but here's another thing. Look at this. Here's why I like Mayweather the most, though, even more than anything with boxing. Just imagine this. Just imagine you right now, and you working at your job right now, right? And your boss, you know, is only going to pay you what he feels you're going to get paid. You know, you may feel like, yo, at my job, I should be getting paid $150,000 a year, or whatever the case may be, whatever your salary may be. But, you know, they're going to pay you what they feel you deserve, right? So just imagine if you can put yourself in a situation from your job, right? When you leave your job and now you're making more money, right, than your boss that told you you can only make this amount of dollars. Now you're making more money than him. You know, that's what Mayweather did. He's under Bob Arum. You know, their top fighter at the time was De La Hoya. That was the cash cow. And that was the guy who was getting the big fights and bringing in the money. Right? Mayweather was somewhere down the list in the stable back then for Bob Arum. So what'd he do? You know, he took a gamble on himself, bought out his contract, and became the you know, one of the highest paid athletes in sports, period, with no endorsements. Think about that. You know, most big athletes, LeBron, whomever it may be, in any sport. I forget the guy's name from soccer, the big guy from soccer. Like all of these people who may even come close to what Mayweather did financially as far as being an athlete, they all had endorsements. This dude did it with 0 endorsements. So, again, it's amazing. Amazing stuff. And again, I was not his biggest fan. I'm still not a big fan of Mayweather like that. You know, certain things in his character, you know, that, you know, I may not approve of or agree with, but I got to give credit where credit is due. And, yeah, I still think, again, that he would have beat until, you know, you just got to look at everyone's body of work. And those guys, back to the Hearns and Hagler fight in particular, those guys, they went out there. You've never seen anything like that. We got two guys just went out there, threw caution to the wind and just went at it like it was like a real fight. Like, you know, they weren't trying to set nothing up, nothing. They just went in there and just, you know, put it all on the line right there. First round. You know, never seen anything else like it. Closest to it, as far as just dudes really going at it, is bring up Corrales again. Corrales versus why am I not thinking of his name right now? Castillo. Corrales versus Castillo. Both of those fights. Crazy. Talk about, you know, high-level brawling. If you like that, if that's what you like, Hagler versus Hearns, Corrales versus Castillo 1 and 2. those two fights are probably the closest thing I've seen to Hagler versus Hearns, as far as guys just throwing caution to the wind and just. But still, nothing like Hagler and Hearns, man. Hagler and Hearns still, in my book, the illest fight I ever seen from two top-level fighters, for sure.